Rob from NYC. Hey, Dutch, big fan. Here's a few questions. Well, actually, there's only one question I'm going to ask you from him. Who do you think was the greatest manager of all time? If you cannot narrow it down to one, what would your top three be?
Well, Zeb Colter and Zeb Colter and Zeb Colter.
What about Uncle Zebekiah?
And he was kind of a jack off. He just they never did anything. They never did anything with him really.
Were you on the road? Were you on the road as Uncle Zebekiah? So you went because at some point I believe WWF stopped all managers from going on the road in like late '95. Is that true?
Yeah, I said. Well, as after I left.
Okay.
But if you see a manager on TV, you quite naturally expect to see him on the road, especially with the same guy, because they become a pair. They become a tag team, kind of, not necessarily a tag team, but they were always together. I would say the number one manager I ever saw, entertaining manager, was probably Bobby Heenan, because he was a show unto himself, plus could work. You could do anything to him, but he was funny to listen to. And he was even funny later on, and I met him. I never met him but a couple of times, but he always remembered my name. Dutch, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Very good guy. I saw him after he got, I guess, cancer, and they had to do the surgery on his, but he was still Bobby, and he was still as sweet as he could be to me. But he could get heat. He was a heat magnet. Now you can see a lot of those managers in New York got it, like, but I never really saw it. They had heat, but not heat that I would really enjoy. I would say the next one, Cornette. You can say what you want to about Cornette. I don't care what you say. That guy was a natural from day one, because he's a talker, and he'll talk you into hating him. He just keeps on and on and on and on, and you feel like killing him. And and the others are a kind of a mismatch of, I would say, for heat only, Gary Hart. Gary Hart in Texas. But see, Gary Hart, you never saw a light side of Gary Hart. You always saw the severe side. You always saw the hateful side. And that's what people got in their minds about Gary Hart. And when he'd do something, I mean, they really disliked that guy. I had a 6-man tag with him when I first went into Texas. And this was my only time, other than Memphis, that I worked with the Von Erichs. I was in a match in Houston, which is one of their main clubs. They don't call them towns, or they call it clubs. Some people would call it, the old timers would call it the Houston or a club. I was in a 6-man tag with Killer. God, I can't remember his last name now. I do that quite a lot, though. But I was in with Gary Hart, Killer, somebody, I can't remember his name, good guy. No, not him. Beard and hair in Texas. Stayed there for years. Still can't remember.
No.
And the 3 Von Erichs with the old man in there. And it was actually a pretty good match. It was like, I think it was my first time in Houston. And people didn't know me from Adam's House Cat. But I went out there, and since I was with the Killer and I was with Gary Hart, I call it heat by osmosis. I mean, I was just heat by association. Because if I was with them, I couldn't be a decent human being. I had to be a piece of crap if I would associate with them. And this is on Sportskeeda, which let me plug the show one more time. Every Friday night, we do a Sportskeeda on Facebook, on Sportskeeda. Look it up. We do a live recap of SmackDown and Rampage every Friday night at 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, it gets a little bit earlier the farther west you go. But I talked about guys that have or girls too, that have characters that they want to get over. And we came upon Ronda Rousey. And I says, first of all, Ronda Rousey goes to the ring trying to smile at all the people, but then gets in the ring and wants everybody to hate her. I said, I think they need to keep that character from the dressing room door, or that, what the door they come through, till they get in the ring. If you're going to be an asshole, look like an asshole. Treat the people like crap if you want them to boo you. But she comes out there smiling, and like Bianca Belair used to going to be running into the ring. She'd be out there skipping, her friend getting the crap beat out of her, but she's there doing her hair and skipping around. Get your ass to the ring. I don't know why WWE does that, but I think that's one of the worst things they can possibly do if they're trying to get a character over. And and Ronda's over. And they asked me on the Sportskeeda, why did Liv Morgan win the title, lose the title? Because they got her over a little bit, but not enough to carry that title. Because you can't put Liv against everybody, but you can Ronda. Ronda take them all on and probably beat their asses. But little Liv just wasn't. I think Liv is hurt by the presence of the Shayna Baszler. What's her name? Baszler, and she's hurt by Ronda Rousey because she's a cute girl, cute young lady, but nobody thinks she could beat Ronda Rousey. Nobody. So there you go from trying to be a model and look great to being a woman who can beat your ass. And that's what they're trying to get across with those last two, and that's why Liv lost the title.
Mm-hmm. We'll sort of wrap it up with the manager question with Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette especially. What is it with those two? Why did they have the magic formula of being incredibly entertaining yet retaining their heat constantly? But I mean, I know you're doing the talking, but all managers talk. But why was it they could just be incredibly entertaining and yet still be hated? What did they do differently to everyone else?
Well, they were with good heels. I mean, you could put them with a heel that people kind of liked and it wouldn't match up. But put them with, Heenan had the monsters. He had the big bad, like he had the two cowboys there one time. It was Wyndham and Black Jack Lanza and whoever, and they were heels. And then if they brought, say, Abdullah, he'd be with Abdullah. And he was like Jimmy Hart. Oh, I got to put Jimmy Hart in there. Mm. Jimmy Hart's got to be in there. He's probably in second, Cornette in third. But they were the resident managers to bring people in. Now, Memphis ran on one theme, basically, and it was Lawler and Jimmy. Because Jimmy used to manage Lawler. Lawler broke his leg, and Jimmy went out there one day, and I may have said this about breaking his jaw. He said, well, they shoot horses, don't they? And apparently that made Lawler mad, so not right away, but when Lawler came back, he broke Jimmy's jaw. And I know Lawler throwing the punch. He has precise precision in his punches. And he could only break somebody's jaw if he wanted to. I mean, he couldn't break my jaw, but he was as light as a feather. So I meant to tell me that he was. It's called a receipt. He gave Jimmy a receipt. Now, if you talk to Lawler, he'll deny it. Jimmy will deny it because I was just with them 2 months ago, and they're still big buddies. They went to high school together. So their friendship goes back a long, long time. But what are you saying? What made Cornette and
I mean, especially
Heenan and Jimmy,
especially with Bobby as well, is that he appealed to the kids. He could be like family friendly, amusing and entertaining, yet still be hated and draw money.
he's irritating. Let me say that. He's irritating, and you like him to, you say, oh, that son of a, of course, you knew he was going to do it. And he would bring all the bad guys out that were going against their favorites. He would bring them in, and he was always there. See, Memphis ran off Lawler and Jimmy Hart, and Florida ran off Dusty and some whoever he wanted to wrestle, and Bruno in New York is the same deal. They kept in Von Erichs in Texas. It all ran off the theory of you keep the resident baby faces and run the heels through. And it worked like that for years and years and years. Say if a heel come into Memphis in January, I could tell you when he was going to finish. If he had the run with Lawler, he'd finish about September. He'd give him 9 months, and him and Lawler would do everything they're going to do. And then all of a sudden, they'd have this other, what they call dragon, sitting out there breathing smoke. And by the time he disposed of that one dragon who had bothered the kingdom for the last 9 months, when he got rid of him, now here comes the other fire-breathing dragon to do the same process all over again, but with a different character. And it worked like that for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And all wrestling is good versus evil, good versus bad. It's almost biblical in the sense that it's right versus wrong. And it's worked for years and years and years. And it will still work today because every movie has an antagonist. Every movie has a protagonist. You got the good guy and the bad guy. And it usually ends with the good guy reigning supreme, standing tall over the kingdom, bringing peace back. So when a movie ends when the bad guy wins, you go, It's kind of a letdown feeling.
But there's also a couple of examples like Heat or Terminator, the original Terminator, where the bad guy's so good, so cool in a sense, that you want to see the bad guy win, but you still stick around to the end of the film.
Well, there he is, but that's a different type movie. But that tells you one thing, and you can actually see wrestling heels like that too. You kind of like them, and the people turn them babyface. Because if you're out there and you're trying to be a heel, and the people are kind of cheering you, if the bookers listen, they got to say, well, trying to put heat on this girl, maybe or this guy might be a little bit harder to do than what I thought. So they just turn them babyface. Don't fight your customers. Listen to your audience. Get the temperature of the room. They'll tell you what they want. I mean, I used to do it in Puerto Rico. I'd go out there or even Memphis, wherever I was booking, and I'd listen to the people. And they would tell me what to do next. I didn't go back and say, oh, my God, I don't know what to. I said, well, hell, this guy here, I'm going to turn him. And now you know you're going to make them happy. Now, if they like him, now you bring a bigger heel that's going to do something to him. See what you got. All wrestling is a guessing game anyway. You can say, well, if I do this. And how many times have I said this? It's not the first thing you do. It's the second thing you do. Because if the second thing doesn't follow the first thing, you're back where you started, maybe worse off. You've already burnt the angle. So there's only 7 finishes in there's only 7 finishes in wrestling. It's like seven story endings.
To close off the podcast, for God's sake, this camera's so blue. I keep putting my phone in the way to sort of like try and reset. There we go. Reset the sharpness on it. I don't know what's going on. Bill Eadie said some great advice when he turned, probably with Demolition, is when he turned from heels to baby faces, and he was asked, so what did you change about the characters to make them baby faces? And he said, nothing. Because they were cheering us as heels because they liked what they saw. You don't change anything about your character. So if you do, then you're not what they cheered for in the first place.
Right. You don't change nothing because they can't be cheering for what you might be. They're cheering what they like now. And I could see how they could be babyface. But them being baby faces, they got to have some badass, kick-ass heels to even match up to them. That's the only drawback to it, because they were big, two massive guys, and all of a sudden you don't turn babyface against like a team weighs 200 pounds. People don't believe it, because then you go in there, and if the little team beats the big team, guess what you've done? You've killed both of them. You've killed the team you're trying to get over, and you kill the other team that you want to get over also. So you kill them both. See, wrestling it's not hard, but it's not easy.